Now let's go over how to test a capacitor. Please remember to remove all jewelry while using your multimeter. Read and understand the safety precautions of your multimeter in the instructions that came with your meter. The first step is to shut off all power going to your heat pump. Then unscrew the 2 screws at the bottom sides of the heat pump to remove the front cover. Carefully remove the front cover and place it out of the way. Now remove these 2 screws holding the metal enclosure in place. Open to reveal the capacitors and some of the other components. Now turn on the power to the heat pump. The capacitors are located together here. The small one is the fan capacitor. The larger one is the compressor capacitor. To start, carefully remove the leads on the fan capacitor and ground the capacitor with a screwdriver to discharge any stored electricity in the capacitor. Touch the terminals of the capacitor with a screwdriver with an insulated handle, and touch the back case of the heat pump as shown. Next, set your multimeter dial to microfarad or capacitance. Touch the black lead to one terminal and the red lead to the other terminal, and then just wait a bit to get your reading. On these capacitors, it doesn't matter which terminal you touch with the black lead and which terminal you touch with the red lead, as long as they're on separate terminals. Now, look on the side of the fan capacitor and you'll see the rating of that capacitor. This one is 7.5 microfarads, plus or minus 3%. Our reading on the multimeter was 7.48 microfarads, which is in the range of the plus or minus 3%, so this capacitor is good. You'll see voltage specifications on the side of the capacitor as well. Any motor that turns will create voltage, even though it takes voltage to move the motor. This capacitor is rated for 440 volts, which is the limit for taking voltage from the motor. Never replace a capacitor with a lower voltage rating than the one on the capacitor you're changing. You can't replace, for example, a 440 voltage capacitor with a 375 voltage capacitor. Now, return the 2 brown leads to the poles on the fan capacitor. 1 lead per pole as shown. Now, let's do the same test on the compressor capacitor. Remove the 2 yellow leads carefully with the needle nose pliers with insulated handles. Then discharge the capacitor by using a screwdriver with an insulated handle to touch the 2 terminals of the capacitor and the back wall of the heat pump as shown. This will discharge any stored electrical current. Now take the black lead and the red lead and touch each terminal separately. It doesn't matter which lead goes to which terminal on these capacitors. Here we have a reading of 79.8 microfarads. On the side of the larger fan capacitor, we see it has an 80 microfarad rating, plus or minus 5%. So this capacitor is good. If our readings were over or under the plus or minus 5%, we would want to replace the capacitor. Sometimes when a capacitor is bad, they will bloat or swell up like these. Anytime you see a swollen capacitor like these, they should be replaced immediately. Now, return the yellow leads, 1 to each pole, and you're done. It makes no difference what lead goes to what pole on these capacitors. Just ensure that each yellow wire is on a separate terminal of the capacitor.